Well, welcome back to my rundown of all the Marvel Cinematic Universe films leading up to Avengers Endgame. And yes, you will see Captain Marvel review soon. I haven't seen it yet, but when I do, I will do a review on it. So keep that in mind. But anyway, so The Avengers. This was a movie that was insanely hyped when it came out. Not only was it the first time that we were ever going to see Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, the Hulk, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Nick Fury, all these guys come together, but it was the culmination of 5 other movies that came before it. This was something that was never really done before in modern media. And not only that, but there was a lot of skepticism. I'll say that because, as Man of Steel proved a year later, movie studios really want people to believe the fact that people really enjoy comic book movies that are more seriously grounded and more darker and realistic and all that other stuff, and that they're pretty much just trying to make the Nolan Batman movies. But Avengers proved no. Superheroes don't have to be like that. They could be fun. They could be action packed. But sometimes you can be able to have cool messages in there here and there. But we'll get to that when we get to that. But superhero movies can just be fun, and that's what The Avengers is. It's a really, really good superhero film. So, what is the movie about? The movie is about Loki returning after he supposedly died at the end of Thor. Now he's sporting something called the Mind Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones. Yeah, the Infinity Stones were set up way early in the MCU. And he ends up using that to be able to take control of the minds of Hawkeye and Dr. Eric Selvig. Both were introduced in the first Thor film. Nick Fury decides the fact that Loki is a big threat, as he's going to summon an alien race known as the Chitauri to invade Earth once he gets his hands on a device known as the Tesseract, which in the Marvel Comics is the Space Stone, one of the other Infinity Stones. So yeah, you can definitely tell the fact that they're going really knee deep in this. But so Nick Fury decides it's time to activate the Avengers Initiative. Time to bring together Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, Steve Rogers, Captain America, Thor, Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, and when Hawkeye eventually is, when he eventually is no longer controlled by Loki, he becomes a big part of the team. But yeah, he has to bring all those guys together. But Loki has more sinister plans afoot. And from that moment on, it's just one-liners and action. In any other movie, this wouldn't work. But surprisingly enough for this movie, it does work. Because we've seen all these characters leading up to this movie, it's actually really intriguing to see them interact with each other. If the movie was just them sitting in a room just interacting with each other, it would still be interesting because we understand these characters very well. Sure, they ended up recasting Edward Norton with Mark Ruffalo in this movie, but I actually think Mark Ruffalo did an amazing job as the Hulk. He did a great job. All the actors do an amazing job, of course. Samuel L. Jackson is Nick Fury. I mean, how can you go wrong? But there is one... I just realized the fact that the magazine fell again. No need to worry. Fixed it. But anyways. Yeah. But the brilliant thing about this movie is the fact that towards the climax, it feels like it's gonna end at any single moment. It's like, oh, you think it's gonna end after they punch a few more guys and that's it? Really, when it comes to the action near towards the ends of Marvel movies, they're not really all that great, particularly around this time period because they're just starting to get a footing on what they're doing. But here, it's just amazing. One of the best moments is when they do that big team shot that just circles around the camera and you get to see all of the Avengers. It's so cool. And that amazing Alan Silvestri music behind them is just great. It's definitely one of the highlights of a superhero movie, in my opinion. But here's the thing, though. Originally, the Avengers didn't get along with each other. They would bicker and argue with each other. But it took the death of Phil Coulson that bring them together. Who was Phil Coulson, you're wondering? He's appeared in the first 2 Iron Man movies, he appeared in the first Thor film, and he even has a TV show now called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's considered to be a superhero expert, and he's a really, really big fan of Captain America, but spoilers, he ends up getting killed by Loki, and it was because of Coulson's death that the team finally came together. In fact, Coulson even says at one point, you know, the world is looking very bleak, so sometimes the world might need a little old-fashioned. Because, you know, at this point, pretty much almost every single comic book movie wanted to be like the Nolan Batman movies. But they're not the Nolan Batman movies. They can be their own unique thing. And it's very intriguing to see how this puts into play a ton of other things in the MCU. So, yeah. Then, of course, I gotta talk... So, yeah, The Avengers is a great, great superhero film. It has a ton of action, ton of laughs, great characters. Really cool. 9.5 out of 10. The reason why I give it a 9.5 and not a 10 out of 10 is because I do feel like the fact that the story is a bit basic, but I feel like that's kind of the point. And it does feel a little bit long, but hey, that's just me. Then, of course, we gotta talk about the post-credit scenes. The first post-credit scene gives us the introduction to Thanos. And this sets up, you know, Thanos is coming, but we don't know who Thanos is except for comic fans. At this point, you know, we had no idea who Thanos was and what he was going to do, but then there's the second post-credits scene. And I want to establish the fact that earlier in the movie, after Iron Man flies into space after pretty much blowing up the Jotari with that nuclear bomb, he says, hey, have any of you guys tried shawarma? I saw a shawarma place on the way back. And the second post-credit scene is they're just sitting at a shawarma place just eating there. And also, fun fact, the reason why Captain America isn't eating anything, the reason why he has his face covered up like that is because Chris Evans, the actor who plays Captain America, was in the middle of filming a movie called Snowpiercer. And in the time between this and Snowpiercer, which was, and by the way, this idea of the after credit scene was an afterthought. But anyways, it was an afterthought, so he had to wear a mouthpiece and he had to cover up his mouth because he didn't want people to see the beard that he had grown in between the 2 movies. So that's the reason why you don't see him eating anything. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up those real quick. So yeah, tune in next time where I do a review of 2 movies again, where I cover Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World. So get ready for that. Until next time, stay gold.